Hey guys, Boomer here. Out in the bike shed, or what's become the bike shed. I have three bikes in here, and I personally like to ride as much as I can all year long, which is a challenge here in Michigan with the Michigan weather. In fact, let me swing around here real quick and show you what we're dealing with. And there you go. That's what we're dealing with right now. And I live, sorry about my hand, let me get this back in. There you go. Of course, you probably preferred my hand anyway. But I have two of my bikes winterized. But it's really a pain to put the battery back in because it's on a tender, but the batteries are on tenders. And to fire it up, go for your ride, and then to re-winterize the thing again after you've been on your short ride. So of the three bikes, I keep the Intruder here. It's not to say that I don't winterize it. I do. I treat the fuel, and I kind of plug up the exhaust when it sits in here. I don't want any little critters getting in. But once every week and a half, I'll come out and fire it up and get it nice and warmed up so that when I go for that ride, she's ready to go. And really, if the streets are clear and the temperature's in the mid to upper 30s, then why not? I can go ride. I have the gear to stay warm. That's in another video. But right now, the streets, at least to get out of my neighborhood, there's no way I'm going to get out to the main roads because they're just snow covered and packed down and icy and on two wheels. That's just asking for trouble. So I can wait. It's going to be in the 40s this coming week, and I think Thursday it'll be 47 with rain. So by next weekend, all of this hopefully is going to be gone. But what I wanted to talk to you about today are limitations. As Clint Eastwood says, man's got to know his limitations. I think about Devin Larratt, the Canadian professional arm wrestler. His nickname is No Limits, Devin Larratt. On a motorcycle, man, woman, doesn't matter. You've got to know your limitations. You probably don't think about it much, and at least probably not as much as we should, and I think we should think about it a little bit more often. We owe it to ourselves as motorcyclists and to our families, to our loved ones, that if we put ourselves on two wheels, to be as safe and as skilled as we can when we go out. And really, what made me think about this was I saw a video. There were a group of riders, and in fact, all the riders except one were on sport bikes. One guy was on, it was a cruiser, but I think it was a Suzuki Boulevard. Pretty sure that's what it was. So you get this group of riders, and he actually took a little bit of heat for being on the cruiser, good-natured fun. But of this group of bikes, once they hit the road, one of them went down. Can you guess which one? The cruiser. I don't know why, because it wasn't on video. I know that the guys that had the video had to turn around and go back because their friend had gone down, but if I had to venture a guess, he was probably riding outside of his skill, his limits, or the limits of the bike to try and keep up with these sport bikes or to do what they were doing. That'd be my guess. I don't know, since we didn't see it. But that made me think about it, that there are three areas where we have to know our limitations. One is the rider. The rider has limitations, and that has to do with your experience and your skill sets as a motorcycle rider. The other area would be the limitations of your bike. And the third would be the limitations of the roads and your surroundings. And just to look at these briefly, something that we should think about is, and I'm reminded of MC Rider. His name is Kevin. Subscribe to his channel. I subscribe. I support him through Patreon. The guy knows his stuff. He's a master instructor, or at least he was. He's had to step down from that down in Texas. Really, really good instruction, good videos, field guide. Anyway, look him up, MC Rider on YouTube. But he said what happens is you go through the MSF course, you get your basic training done, And then you ride for 5 years and have the tendency to say you have 5 years worth of experience. You don't. You have the experience that you gained in the MSF course that you have then repeated for 5 years, but you've not continued to learn, to train, to improve your skill sets. So you really don't have 5 years worth of experience. The old saying that when you begin to ride, you just need to pray that your bucket of luck doesn't run out before your bucket of skills and experience fills up. And that is so true. Beginner mistakes. Nobody's going to come out of the MSF course being on a little Rebel 250 or whatever it is that they use and hit the expressway at 70, 75 miles an hour on a Valkyrie. You don't have the skills, the training, and the experience to be able to do that. It is a process. And you have limitations. Every motorcyclist has his limitations. They're just to what degree? What does your experience and your skill set allow you to do? You have to continue to train, to continue to practice, to continue to learn, and to improve those skill sets to raise those limitations. The guy on the bike, the Suzuki that went down, again, I don't know what happened, but he probably exceeded, he would have had to have exceeded his limitations, either his limitations or the limitations of the bike. That's not to say things don't happen that are out of your control. You know, I used to teach wilderness survival at the YMCA with little kids. And of course, we would get into bears, and I would talk about things that you could do when you're out in the wilderness. And it would always be a what if game. Well, what if this happened and you're out in the woods, or what if that happened? And with bears, you know, one of the things with brown bears is you never turn and run with any wild animal, because that just triggers their instinct to chase you down. But one of the things you can do not brown bears, black bears, because we don't have brown bears here in Michigan, but make yourself big, you know, make yourself loud, and odds are you're going to chase him off, but you never turn and run. And so, well, what if this and what if that? And I'm like, guys, there is no guarantee. When you get on a motorcycle, there is no guarantee. But what you as a rider are trying to do is to put as many of the odds in your favor as you can. And that comes with training, improving, learning, which never ends on a motorcycle. You know, I think about limitations as you get older, because I'm a boomer, thus the channel Boomer on Two Wheels. In fact, believe it or not, the boomer generation goes a few years beyond when I was born, so I'm well within that boomer category. But I know a lot of older riders who have had to switch to trikes because they just don't have the strength in their legs to hold up a motorcycle on two wheels. So they've understood their limitations and they have adjusted. So another thing to consider as a boomer, as you get older, is your reaction time. Your reaction time is not as quick, not as crisp as when you're a younger rider. So hopefully your experience and your training makes up for that. But understand what your limitations are. Understand the limitations of your motorcycle. You know, the Suzuki Cruiser is not going to have the same abilities in terms of perhaps power, of cornering and things like that as one of these crotch rockets, sport bikes. It's just not going to be there. It's not designed for that. It's designed for cruising. It's a cruiser. So that bike has limitations. Also, the condition of your bike will also determine the limitations. You know, if it's raining, you don't want to go out if you have bald tires. You're going to exceed the limitations of the traction you have with those bald tires. You shouldn't be on bald tires in the first place. But what's the condition of your bike? I know a guy who doesn't have rear brakes. He uses his front brakes. Sorry, bad move. Because you can stop so much faster using front and rear brakes in tandem than you can using one or the other solo. And there are times when you don't want to use your front brakes. You know, if you're in a turn Never ever use your front brakes because you will go down in a turn. Now, I'm talking low speed turns. There's something called trail braking, which is an advanced technique. But if you're like in a parking lot and you're kind of turning and you grab that front brake, bad move. You're going to go down. So again, learning, keeping your bike in its tip-top shape, tires and brakes and suspension. If your fork seals are gone, if you have fork seals, because I know Springers don't have fork seals, but if you have fork seals, and most bikes do, if they're shot and you're leaking oil and you got a lot of bouncing up and down, I mean, that's going to reduce your limits as to what you can do on a bike. So you have limits, your skill set, your abilities. Your bike has limits on what it was designed for and the condition that it's in. But there are limits on the road as well. Just to give you an example, if you're on blacktop asphalt, nice, clear, dry day, you can take a curve a lot faster and a lot safer than you can if it's raining or if it's a gravel and dirt road, right? Okay, because limitations, your limitations go down when there are certain things in play, like wet surfaces, bad tires, gravel on the road, which goes back to your ability as a driver or as a rider to understand the limitations of your bike and of the road that you're traveling on. So those are the three areas: the limits of the rider, the limits of the bike, and the limits of the roads that you're traveling, the limitations, which I guess you could add a fourth one, limits of the weather, seeing the conditions we have here. I know that to try and take my bike out on these roads that are basically snow-covered ice exceeds the limits that I'm willing to go, because odds are I'm going to slip, slide, and go down. I'm not willing to go there. So I guess that's the weather limits, the limits of the road, and my limitations as a rider. I'm not saying that some riders couldn't do it, especially if you maybe got a bike designed for that. Maybe an adventure bike or something on a cruiser. No, ain't happening. So understand what your limitations are as a rider and continue to improve upon those abilities and skills. Understand the limitations of your bike. What can your bike do? What shouldn't your bike try to do? Like follow, the crotch rockets in curves and stuff if you're on a cruiser. Understand the limitations of your environment, whether it be the roads, the weather. I guess that's a good way to put it, your environment. Limitations. We have limitations as riders. Don't exceed those limitations, because that's an invitation to trouble. So that's why we always say ride safe, ride often, and until next time. And do me a favor, we're trying to grow the channel. And it was so cool today. I ran into a guy, I was at a store, and I heard, "Hey, Boomer." And it took a minute to register. And he says, "Oh, I watch your videos. Hey, get that Grom. If you're seeing this, get that Grom, man. Grom's cool. Anything on two wheels is fun." Sean from SRK Cycles always says, anything on two wheels is fun. Get your Grom, man. I hope that your folks let you get it. But then improve your skills, improve your abilities. Never, ever stop learning. Go into a parking lot, set up some cones. MC Rider's Field Guide will help you with this. For a couple bucks a month, subscribe, you get the field guide. Well worth it. Practice, train, and increase your abilities and skill sets, whether you're on, again, a Valkyrie or a Grom, an ultra classic, or a little monkey bike. You're on two wheels. We owe it to ourselves and our families to continue to strive to be the best riders that we can be. That's my goal, to continue to learn. In fact, I'm starting to take a course right now on crash scene management. And I will be certified. And if I come across a crash where a biker has gone down, I will know what to do, and perhaps more importantly, what not to do if you happen to come across a crash scene on a bike. And I guess from what I'm reading, what started this were nurses who were also motorcyclists and realized that there is a difference between what can happen on a motorcycle versus what can happen in a car, and they were ill prepared to handle it. You never see someone in a car out on the roadway wearing a helmet. Now you do on NASCAR, but that's not what we're talking about. But riders on motorcycles should be wearing helmets, ATGAT, all the gear all the time, because you never know. And I will preach that. I know there are guys who will argue till they're blue in the face, and people that just won't do it, and that's fine. It's entirely up to you. But I'm a guy that's always going to have on my helmet. But if you see a rider down, should you take his helmet off? You ever think about that? No, not necessarily. I mean, there are some circumstances where maybe you should, and that's one of the things that I'm going to learn in this course, and it's invaluable. And that's through Dan the Fireman. Hats off to you, sir. Great job watching your videos. So anyway, there's a lot to learn, and I'm a boomer, and I'm still learning. And if I can do it, you can too. So spread the word about the channel. Let people know. And don't forget the space. It's Boomer Space on 2 Wheels here on YouTube. Let's grow the channel, and let's get the word out. So once again, ride safe, ride often. Until next time, bye for now.